Hi colleagues, my name is Megan Hargrave. I am an education coach and consultant in the Chicago area. I have previously worked for the Reading and Writing Project out of Columbia University for 7 years and have been excited to be able to support some of your colleagues for the better part of this year. This flipped lesson or this flipped session is going to be a precursor to our time together on Wednesday, where we are going to do a deeper dive into battling the e-learning fatigue, coupling flipped instruction, coupling e-learning with effective feedback that moves students forward. So with that said, I want us to start the conversation. I think the big word in that title that we look at for our session together on Wednesday is the word feedback. And so with that said, I want you to find a piece of paper or something near you, and I want you to go ahead and I want you to just start brainstorming or jotting down any word that comes to mind when you think about the umbrella of feedback. So go ahead, I'll do it too. Jot down anything that comes to mind with feedback. Just take another 10 seconds. What are the words that come to mind? So now that you've jotted down some of your own definitions or words that come to mind with feedback, I'm going to go ahead and just name out what some of the lead researchers in education say around feedback. First of all, let's look at Grant Wiggins. He's the guru of transference and universal design for learning. And he says that feedback is information about how we are doing in an effort to reach a goal. John Hattie, the author of Visible Learning, says that effective feedback is essentially the learning cycle. The learning cycle where you observe progress and you name a next step. You observe progress and you name a next step. Sheila Heen, who wrote the book, Thanks for the Feedback, says that evaluation and feedback need to be separated. And a lot of times we couple these two together and it can muddy the waters. She said that evaluation can drown feedback. For example, if I were to write a term paper and my professor wrote a grade at the top of the term paper, I'm going to look at that grade and might mute out some of their notes along the side of that paper. And then last but not least, Buckingham and Goodall, who are authors of the feedback fallacy that looks at feedback in the classroom but also the professional world, say that feedback should focus on what you are doing. They say that feedback helps us excel when we get feedback from people who know us, people who care about us, and people who name out what is already working in whatever it is that we're doing. So when we think about feedback, there are a lot of different definitions, but feedback is something that cannot be avoided in the world. Feedback, we get feedback when we play tennis and you hit the tennis ball and where does it land or how hard does it come back? That's all feedback. When you're a comedian and you stand up and you tell a joke, the reaction of the audience is feedback. As teachers, if we teach a lesson and students are either engaged or nodding off, that gives us feedback. So feedback matters in the world, but feedback matters in our classrooms. Now more than ever, but across any type of learning. And so with that said, I'm going to just take us through 4 major tenets of why feedback matters in the classroom. And so when we think about why feedback in the classroom, why is this a topic worth studying? Why is this a topic worth really thinking about, especially now when we know our plates are full? The first thing I want to just say is that feedback makes all students seen and heard. Feedback is our opportunity to say, I see you, I hear you, let me help you with the next step. And so effective feedback will help us make sure that all students have that. The second thing is that feedback really builds positive and productive relationships, both between teachers and students, but also between peers and between parents and their student. And that means that we've got to look at what is effective feedback, because feedback won't always build positive and productive relationships if it's done in a way that feels punitive or if it's done in a way that feels evaluative. And then 2 other things, we think about why feedback. Feedback allows for differentiation and universal access. Feedback gives us as teachers feedback for next steps, for small groups that we need to pull, for what we need to say to a learner. And it allows us to really think about altering our instruction. Sometimes I say upshifting and downshifting based on what it is that we see a learner doing around a specific learning target or standard. And then last but not least, feedback names out what students are already doing and gives a next step. And that goes back to what Hattie says is the learning cycle. I name what you're doing, here's a next step. Name what you're doing, here's a next step. So I think we would all agree that there are reasons why we should tackle this topic of feedback. And I plan on giving you lots of practical and productive strategies for giving efficient and effective feedback in the classroom that keeps in mind all of these tenets when we meet together on Wednesday. The last thing that I'd like you to do in preparation for our time on Wednesday is to do a little self-assessment on your own effective feedback. And right now, what I want you to do is I want you to think about comfort level when it comes to effective feedback and time spent. And then go ahead and make a little scale, 1 to 10, 1 to 10. And on the scale 1 to 10 for comfort level, I want you to put an S where you feel yourself in brick and mortar school, and a V for virtually, not comfortable or very comfortable. And again, not comfortable or very comfortable with effective feedback. And then the next one, pretty obvious, is time spent. Very little time spent or extensive amounts of time spent when it comes to your effective feedback, both in brick and mortar school and virtually. So if you would plan on coming together to our time on Wednesday with these things to start our conversation, and also with any additional questions or thoughts that you have based on what I've shared so briefly today, I will look forward to continuing the conversation then. Thanks so much, guys.